On today's show, I'm going to share with you the lessons that I learned during my 2 years at Harvard Business School and how I took those lessons home to my business and effectively triple our net. Hi, I'm Tulay, and welcome to the Simple Profit Podcast, where we focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is to provide you with insights and strategies on how to build million-dollar grossing businesses. From 2014 to 2016, I had the privilege of being a student at Harvard Business School within their executive educational program. And the learning time that I spent there was transformational, not because I had the best teachers and the best curriculum, but it was the opportunity for me to be around other business leaders that were just light years ahead of me in not only how big their business was or is, but also the experience that they had. They've had sometimes 20, 30 years plus of experience compared to what I had at the time. So that was really humbling for me, and it was really eye-opening as well. And here's the most important thing that I took away from that whole experience. It wasn't about me, and I'm talking about me here, coming up with the right answer or the wrong answer to a business challenge that was presented in class. It was really about my process of coming up with that answer that really mattered. And it took me well over a year into my study to finally learn this. And I wish it clicked for me earlier because I would have gotten so much more out of it. But regardless, I'm glad I did, because once it did, I started learning and progressing 10 times faster and 10 times more effective. First of all, let me talk about why was I able to learn faster and be more effective. It's because at Harvard Business School, they pioneered this method of teaching called the case study method. And each business case study or class, because we would have like 4 classes a day with different professors, and within each class, we had a case study. And each one of those particular case study is based upon a real life business decision that a real life CEO within a real company had to make for their business. All right. And that was really different because we weren't talking about something that was hypothetical or something that could be, or should be or whatever. No, this was an actual real case that somebody had to make for their business. Okay. And during my time there, for example, we had over 75 case studies that we went over. So 75 classes ranging from companies that are huge, like your Amazon, your Tesla, your Google, your Lululemon, to startups and small businesses like Rent the Runway, actually, which is not that small anymore. At the time I went, they were kind of up and coming. Now they're huge. And like a small company that was based in Boston called the Red Hen Bakery. And each one of these case studies were presented with only the information that was available at the time to the CEO. Like, for example, the Red Hen Bakery, they were doing really well. And they were a spot opened up right next to them that was vacated now because the other business closed down, and they had the opportunity to take that space over to double the size of their business should they do it or not. Okay. And so they presented us with all the information, how well the bakery is doing and what the owner was doing, ABC. Okay. Another case would be like for Amazon, where Jeff Bezos had to make the decision of Amazon, first of all, was at that point selling books and videos and things like that. Okay. But he was presented and he saw where the internet was going. So one of his leaders and him was thinking about entering the internet server space. At that point, there was just servers. If you want to build a software company, you have to have servers like in your office or at your home to store all the database and information that the software company needed, right? Storage space. And they were like, what if we brought all this into the cloud? And then Amazon Web Services started, right? As we know by now, Amazon Web Services makes up the most revenue for Amazon at this point in time. So that's these are the information that we had. Well, of course, if you Google that company, you will simply know how it turned out, like in the case with Amazon and all of that. But that wasn't the case, or that wasn't the goal of these case studies, because it would give you information that we had at the time, that Jeff Bezos has, or the owner of the Red Hen Bakery, or Rent the Runway had. And then it places us, you, me, my classmates, in the seat of that CEO and asked us, what decision would you make and why would you make that? And so as I shared with you before, if you Google them or Google whatever business you're studying, you would find out the answer, right? So the decision was not as important in these case studies, but the way the student or how the CEO approached that decision, a lot of times with incomplete information in front of them, is what really mattered. Let me tell you how the Harvard class was structured. It's really cool. So we live on campus. It wasn't Cambridge. Cambridge is Harvard University. Across the Charles River, about a 5-minute walk, was the campus of Harvard Business School. So technically, it's Boston, okay? But it's 5 minutes away from Cambridge. And the whole university is built on the side of Charles River, and you had like 30 buildings there, right? So Harvard Business School was the biggest business school in the world. But there were also all of these underground tunnels. You can get to every single building in this huge campus. So there's 30 plus buildings. And if you didn't want to, you never needed to step outside. Okay. And there were also like hotel rooms or bedrooms for teachers to sleep in there underneath these tunnels. Okay. Why? Well, if you live in Boston, you know this. In the wintertime, it snows, and it snows a lot. 3 feet, 2 feet, all of this was common. Okay. And so one of the pillars at Harvard Business School is they never miss a class. The teachers will never miss a lesson, and the students will never miss a class, because that's how it worked. And so they had all of these tunnels underneath so that when it snowed really bad, the teachers can sleep in one of the dorms that they had there, and the students can just walk from building to building if they needed. Okay, so a little cool thing about HBS there. But in my classroom, okay, and these classrooms, one, there's no windows. So all of the classrooms were actually underground. And if you imagine kind of like stadium seating, where you had 3 sides of the room, so that no matter where you sat, you had a perfect view of the teacher, or the pit, they call it. The pit is where the teacher stood. It's the lowest point in the classroom, where, they had the projectors and 9 different whiteboards. Every single seat had my name in front of it, my company, and I had a microphone that's there. I can turn my microphone on or off when it's my turn to talk or I want to share. So I had 90 classmates or 90 members in my cohort, and my class alone represented 30 plus countries all over the world in all different industries. And you're talking about finance, software, retail, hospitality, entertainment, government, everything. And I was really proud of the fact that we were representing the first martial arts company to attend the program at Harvard Business School. So that was really cool for us at that point. This is after I got rejected 7 times, by the way. I'll share that story in a different podcast. There were some really incredible people there. I mean, we had the successor for the biggest shoe company in India. We had a partner for the biggest private equity company in Europe, which was really cool. He was actually my living mate, where we studied every day together. We ate together. So that was really cool. And in my group, we had an executive from Walmart, and we even had Swiss Beats in our class. The Swiss Beats is a famous rapper. He's also part owner. At that point, he owned 7% of Reebok. His wife is Alicia Keys. I didn't know this, but one time we were out hanging out at a bar, and he pulled out his phone. He said, I got to take this call. And I'm sitting next to him. We're just talking about business and asking him, what Reebok was like and what type of decision making he made. And he's like, I'm sorry, I got to take this call. My wife's calling. And I saw his phone, and it says Alicia Keys. And I looked over at him. I said, your wife is Alicia Keys? And he's like, yeah. He had this smirk in his face. And of course, he walked off. Anyways, so we had these wonderful people in our class. And because of that diversity, I was able to hear and see how they each approached the same problem within each case study that I had. And that's where the real learning came from. Sometimes the approach that I took was all backwards, right? I really leaned in on what I thought was best from my experience, right? And my life knowledge at that point. But in class, I was forced to not only learn from my small living group, the 8 people, but I was also forced to listen to the 90 people that were there and learn their approach. And it really opened up my eyes to different possibilities. And that's what I took home with me. That's the biggest learning experience. Like, I started to include my team more in the decision-making processes of the company. And I wanted to learn how they would look at these problems and the way that they approach them. This allowed me to be more inclusive. This allowed me to lead my company in a less dictatorship style. Let's put it that way. And it also opened up the ability for me to coach my team as well, because I had perspective that are different than theirs, and they have perspective that are different than mine, right? So that's really what I took home, and that's how our business really took off. Now, that doesn't mean I included them in every decision, I included them in decisions that would have significant impact on them and their operational role within the company. There's some decisions I had to make without them, obviously. It also doesn't mean that I agreed with the opinion that they came up with every single time, or their approach for that matter of fact. Because as a business owner, I have a perspective that is very different compared to my team. So I just want to take a moment to share with you what that is. My perspective takes into consideration of three things: my customers, my employees, and my company. Every decision I make has to have the perspective from the customer, from the team members or employees, and from the company standpoint, right? Here's the thing. In my role as a CEO and as the leader or the owner of the business, I always have to put the business first. You may be looking at me like, wait a minute, the customer's always first, or my team member's always first. Let me give you an example. A decision can be great for the customer, it can be great for the employees, but it can be detrimental to the company. And you're like, how can that be, Tu? If it's great for the customers or great for my team, of course, it's going to, take the company to the next level. Not all the time. Let's say we come up with the decision to give every employee a 30% raise, and at the same time, we cut the tuition costs for our customers also by 30%. This decision is great for the employees. They're going to get paid more. It's great for the customers because they're going to pay less, but it will actually make the company bankrupt, right? Cash flow is going to go straight down to the ground. Why? I'm getting less revenue and I'm paying out more revenue on this side. Okay? So again, most businesses, if you're able to net 20, 30%, you're in a great situation. But if you take away 30% of your gross, you're done. You're losing money. And at the same time, you're going to pay out your employees, which is your biggest cost, payroll, by 30%. You can kind of see how this is a bad decision. So in this particular case, the employees will lose their jobs shortly after they get a nice raise. The customers will no longer have a service that they enjoy from the business. The customers probably say, man, I wish I would have paid more so you stay in business. So in cases like these, and there are more, I have the opportunity to share with the team my perspective, right? The perspective of putting the company first, what that means on cash flow and everything else, to teach them why this decision is not a good one. So that's really important takeaway for me, as I learned from Harvard, is to come in and listen to different approaches. It's not always the answer, and coming up with the answer is the most important thing. No, actually the approach for me to come up with an answer is very important. And sometimes if my approach is different from my team member's approach, it's a good time and it's a good learning experience for us at that point to educate each other. Why am I approaching this in this way? Let me explain to you, Johnny, since you don't do payroll, why I do it this way. And then Johnny, my instructor, would say to me now to say, sir, I don't recommend us moving into that style of a curriculum or giving that product because this is my experience from teaching from the floor and this is what the students want. I am not in my studios right now, guys. I don't teach on the floor. So that perspective from them is really important for me to understand and learn. So that's my biggest takeaway there. Make sure you focus on your approach to the problem, not just the answer to the problem itself. Your approach is actually the bigger part in really making things inclusive and building your staff. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you tune in to the next episode as I will actually go through a real life case study of a business operator who is considering right now which staff member she should put at her new location, her second location. And we're going to place you in her seat as the decision maker. You don't want to miss that one. Please help us by sharing this podcast with a friend and check out mystudio.io for the marketing lead building and management platform for your business. Thank you so much. See you next time.